a platform for exchanging thoughts and bring artists from varied professions to meet each other and share their ideas. So now we are going to start our first discussions, performativity toward technology. So here we will discuss about the individual experience of working with non-human medium like technology and how technology open the boundaries, possibilities, or interference artists' creativity process. So we are very honored to have these three amazing artists who has a very unique and independent voices. So if you don't mind, would you kindly introduce yourself? Maybe start with you.
Yeah, sure. Hi all, my name is Thanakarn Schofield. I'm a composer. Currently, I'm a PhD student at City University of New York in America. So about my work in general, I'm exploring through the ritual and chord music of East Asia and in combining with kinesthetic movement. So I'm gonna pass to Jason.
Hi everyone, I'm happy to be here. I am Jason Thorpe Buchanan. I'm a composer and music technologist teaching at Mahidol University. I'm the chair of the Composition, Theory, and Electroacoustic Music department. I work a lot with interactivity between human performers and technological systems, whether it be digital technology or analog technology, and much of my work has to do with the behavior of those systems and behavior of human performers and how they may influence one another.
Hi, I'm Thitiporn Kotham. I am also an artist, but currently now I'm working for Recruit Assistance, Recruit Therapeutics as the artist assistant. So most of my work is the installation about like people interactive, but also as the relational aesthetic, like everyone can come and join and make fun together, so the audience can do their work together.
Thank you, very interesting. So my name is Noppakorn, Auesirinucroch, a guitarist from the Thitiporn Ensemble. Currently I'm studying Master of Music in the Royal Conservatory of The Hague. And my interest is about the cross-modal between human senses. So I'm currently doing the research on that topic. So I'm very excited about these discussions actually. So I can start the first questions. So I would like to start the panel with the question for you, Thanakarn. So maybe I think as a composer, because I'm the performers, right? So I want to know kind of insight about in the creator perspective. So do you have any previous experience on working with non-human sources like technology? So if you do, so please kindly share your experience to us.
Thank you for your question. I have to be honest, I'm always afraid of touching anything that consists with electric circuit because I tend to, destroy them or explode it. Yeah. But to me, I think technology is an extension of our mind because technology and mind, they are one thing. Our mind is exploring through the concepts of certain things. It could be something that is already created. It could be new model. However, as a human being, all of us, we have certain capacity, limitation, and technology is pushing us beyond that limitation. For instance, like nowadays we have so many models in music and very much complication. For example, like tuning systems, which becomes like so complicated. And the problem is that human body, all the instruments that we have, whether it's Western or traditional instruments, maybe there are some specific tones that can't be produced, but computers or any types of analogs or digital, it could do all those sounds. And for instance, like we even have a program nowadays, for example, like Max ASP or Pro Tools live Abletons. The good thing about these 3 programs, they are not only helping us to shape our music, but also like the most important thing is the post-production. In the past, if we want to do the recording process or we try to, like create a video or anything, maybe they had to be done in studio, but now we can do it anywhere as long as you have all these programs and also proper equipment, but it's, can be carried anywhere and at any time. I hope I answered your question.
Nice, very great. Actually, I have a bit more questions about the recordings. Because since the recording is appear in our world, what do you think recording does with our creative process? Because as a performers, when I kind of record myself, I try to do it like at the perfections, right? So, and sometimes that hope for perfections, it pushed me through the process which cut off my creativities. So I kind of try to stay safe, play safe, to make everything clear, everything direct, but somehow it cut off humans, let's say. What do you think about that? Because I want to know more about composers too. Maybe if you want, Jason can answer that.
Yeah, actually, that's a little bit related to what I was, planning to talk about, which has to do with failure,
yes.
Danger and failure. And I think that this idea of perfectionism in performance it very much aligns with this classical model of performance,
yes.
right?
Yes.
You play the notes on the page,
yes.
You play them correctly, there's a clear performance practice, it's always, I don't want to say that it's the same. Mm-hmm. Certainly there are variables and there are elements that are open to the discretion of the performer. But one of the things that I try to explore in my own work is this idea of the score being a way in which to stimulate a certain kind of response mm-hmm. from human performers. Mm-hmm. And in many of my works, I explore these kinds of boundaries and possible discrepancies, or what we could call errors or mm-hmm. failure, in the ability of the performers to parse information that is provided by the composer. So, and New Complexity, like the music of Brian Ferneyhough, is a clear example of this. There's so much information on the page that the performer needs to parse and find a way to physically execute, that it's inevitable that certain parameters will be ignored or less time and energy will be invested in it. Yeah. And it's an issue of prioritization. They have to prioritize certain kinds of modes of physical behavior, mm-hmm. and those become internalized and inform the rest of the piece. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my music has to do with this idea of stimulus. The score is as a mode of stimulus, and similarly, the technological systems that I work with are meant to have this inherent variability that creates a kind of danger or uncertainty in performance. Mm-hmm. It's not the same every time, and that's by design, is that the performers are forced to then grapple with this thing that is unknown and that is not really so easily controllable, and the way in which they respond to those kinds of small failures or mm-hmm. discrepancies mm-hmm. between what is expected and what actually happens in the moment. That provides a kind of tension in performance that for me is desirable. And so it's interesting how you talk about, as a performer, this idea of perfection and striving for this very precise thing, because actually that is antithetical to what I am trying to do as a composer. True. I actually want you to fail. Right? In a way.
Yes, true. Yeah. Because last year that I played your piece, All Forgetting is Retrieval, right? Mm-hmm. So you compose for septet mm-hmm. and augmented conductors and electronics also, and in that piece you you use kind of what do you call the things that you attach onto conductor's hand?
Sensors.
Sensors, yes. And you use the sensors to trigger the track, to trigger the events, right?
Yeah.
And actually that things can also have the errors.
Yeah.
True?
Well, because actually it's not triggering a specific track.
Yeah.
Each event has a series of sound files that are triggered at random within a certain folder or subdirectory of files. So at any given moment when the conductor performs a gesture, I don't know, and he or she doesn't know what will actually come out of that gesture.
Yes.
But the sounds are always connected to that particular event, so they're sort of curated as being a part of that set or collection, but the precise result and the sequence in which they'll be triggered is unknown.
Yeah. So, like, for that moment, when I play your piece, I mean, I feel that the track, the equipment is one of the performers.
Yeah.
Because it also can generate the sound by itself, and also it can create errors.
Yeah.
Let's say. So, in this way, I think your piece, your use of technological equipments is create the drama in kind of a way that makes us react to present situations, not to expect the perfections. Let's say, which is I love it.
Yeah,
very much.
And that's that kind of danger, actually, that I'm talking about, is I want there to be an uncertainty and I want there to be variability in what
insecure
happens.
somehow.
Yeah, and it keeps you kind of on the edge of your seat. Like, as a performer, you have to be ready at any moment to respond to that. And well, I'll talk about that later in the piece for Sunday, but it's a similar kind of situation.
Nice. So, do you have other compositions that work this way, or maybe opposite way of the things you are doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think with each and every piece, I try to create a new kind of set of boundaries within which to work, or to encourage the performers to work and respond in different ways. So, a lot of what I do with technology has to do with defining boundaries for performance and for behavior. So there's a certain set or a set of behaviors or mode of behavior that is not prescribed, but sort of that relieves a lot of room for interpretation and for variability from the performer. But the idea is that the system encourages them to behave in a particular kind of way, and the notation encourages them to behave in a particular kind of way. But it requires a lot of creativity, I think, on the part of the performer, because they have to intelligently respond to that stimulus and make music out of it and make something that is exciting, right? But again, coming back to this idea of failure, and from the piece last year, that's really what the piece is about. Is it's about human memory and the way in which, as humans, we fail to remember things with a high level of fidelity. It's not like a computer, it's not a hard disk. We misremember things, or our memories are conditioned by our surroundings. And so the things that we recall from an event that took place 5 years ago, if both of us were there, right, we're going to remember those things differently. And those discrepancies in memory and in the triggering of memory, meaning sound files or video files, a lot of my work explores, this idea of recording something in the moment or capturing something in the moment and then retrieving it and changing it or processing it in some way.
Very nice. So, Thanakarn, as a composer, do you have any reflect on Jason's thought and process?
Actually, I have to say, it's very, very interesting. It's quite educated too.
Yes.
The thing is, I actually working on similar ideas, but not in the same concept that you're working through the memories. Now I'm working on the concept of madness, which I wanted to talk about that like in the later section.
Okay.
Let's
So you
part
want to keep
two.
that?
But I will talk a bit now. The thing is like the madness in each one of us is about the concept of this organization, and in which one of us, like no matter what we do, is always different. For example, your madness would be like soft, you would be like very harsh or something like that. And to me, it's like how we reflect our mind through each subject, but it never be the same. It always capture different moment and different meanings. And also like, for example, like our like about us, like three of us, even though like all the events that happening right now, like how we interacting, whatever it is, but in our mind, how we viewing it like at the present time is also different inside here. Yeah.
And you know, that idea also of perception, the way that we perceive events and people external to like our dialogue right now perceive our conversation, it's quite different, like the way that they are observing what we're doing relative to the way that we each perceive the conversation and the things that are happening subconsciously while we have this discussion. And the same thing happens in performance, right? Each person is responding to things differently and panicking in different ways. You know, we have different fears and different uncertainties, and that's really interesting to explore. And I think, you know, another kind of underlying theme in a lot of my work is the idea of multiplicity or multiple contrasting interpretations or manifestations of things, right? And the kind of disorientation or I guess madness that comes with that, right? By perceiving and again, it has to do with parsing information. When we're confronted with a high volume of information and we're trying to work our way through that and parse that information, that phenomenon is really interesting to me. And so providing the audience or the performers with a very kind of high volume of information that they have to unpack, that phenomenon of disorientation or confusion and madness, I think they're related. And that's a really interesting thing for me to explore as a composer.
Yeah, very nice. So I guess like the disorientations and it's great. It also create the effects to the audience, which will react to your piece differently, individually, right?
Yeah, certainly.
So I think now we are very kind of musical education discussion right now. Maybe we can move to Thitiporn. So I have a question for you. So as an artist, in which perceptions do you perceive technology and electronic medium as? Like, for example, do you see it as another ingredient to make your work more interesting, or do you perceive it as some way else?
Well, actually, I did, but not in the visual way. Like my last exhibition in Chiang Mai, I did the lucid dream therapy, but I need to use the sound before I go to sleep, or even some kind of movie that I need to take them inside. So it will like collaborate inside of my brain, and maybe like can develop also with the Jason work before. So I think the technology is like a magic for me that can help us to see the result in the visual way. Like you can't see my dream, just like draw them out or pen them out. But if we have the technology to help, like in the Black Mirror series, it might be work. I don't know.
True. Very interesting.
So like most of my work is about the relational aesthetic. So everyone should be involved to my work. So I think the technology is help a lot for a human relationships with the technology.
Great. So actually in my perspective, like somehow we we kind of sometimes, somehow, we kind of want to escape from technology, right? We want to stop playing Facebook. We want to escape, like we want to stay out, stay in nature. But somehow we cannot avoid that. Somehow it's like the paradoxically happens in our mind. And so maybe next question for you all. So since this year we have faced the world pandemics, right? So which create, I guess, challenge for everyone, actually. So I believe it affects our way of thinking, and it changed the way we are foraging for our sources, and the way we present our art, the way we perceive us also. So I think technology has been playing a big role in this year as the connecting tools and the tools for presenting. So I want to know that how does this pandemic affect you as an artist and how you adapt yourself in this crisis? So maybe we can start with Jason.
Sure. Well, I think it affects us all in different ways.
Yeah.
There are a lot of interesting things, right, about the ramifications of this kind of shared experience as
Yes.
artists and as community members, like global community members. I think that one of the, in a way, beautiful things, not to say that the pandemic is a beautiful thing, but one of the beautiful things about the way that people have responded is through innovation.
Yes,
and
true.
through trying to find new ways to share experiences and reach one another. And in some ways I feel that the pandemic has increased the speed of globalization, because even this event, as evidence of that, we're broadcasting this live over the internet to
all over
into the void.
Yeah.
And hopefully people are viewing it.
Yes.
And I think there's now greater emphasis placed on things like documentation and broadcasting and the way that things are perceived globally. One of the things that I've been interested in over the course of the past year is telematic performance, using the internet as a kind of performance space or performance environment.
Yeah.
So rather than collaborating and performing together in a physical space, using tools like Max or like Zoom or like Sonobus or these other online audio servers to create situations where musicians can perform, or artists or anyone can perform and collaborate together in real time. And there's a long-standing tradition of telematic performance, since probably the 90s. Pauline Oliveros was one of the pioneers in this, and I remember when I was in Hamburg about a decade ago, a composer there, Georg Haidu, had a program called Quintet.net, which allowed composers and musicians to collaborate in real time over the internet. And one of the tools that I've been developing over the course of the last few months with the University of Texas at Austin is a tool that allows for real-time data exchange in Max MSP. So what I'm able to do actually is to send data over the internet using a control interface to control the computers of different performers in real time. So for instance, I can start a recording, I can stop a recording, I can retrieve one of those files that was recorded, I can play it back, I can change the speed of the recording, I can actually perform digital signal processing, so like effects and audio processing locally on that performer's machine using data, control data that I send over the internet.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is there's not actually any audio being transmitted through the software, but control data is being transmitted, and control data to monitor what's happening is being sent back to me. And hypothetically, this could enable the way that we would work with electronics normally in a physical space, with audio signal processing and sound file triggering. We can do all of those things now digitally, and we can record it locally on each individual musician's machine and then compile it later in post-production. And we've only just begun to kind of explore this technology, but I think, again, the speed at which those innovations are happening is increased by the pandemic and increased by the fact that we're not able to be in one physical space together. And in my work with the Switch Ensemble in New York, I think more and more we're developing these kinds of tools and these kinds of opportunities for telematic performance. And it will be really interesting to see how other composers and other ensembles and musicians find and create new tools for using the internet for collaboration in the future.
Wow, that's very kind of futuristic, and
it's quite futuristic.
Yeah, true. Like, I think this innovation may change our performance for all time, right? So like we don't have to go to the one space together anymore. We can stay wherever we want and then perform together.
Yeah.
So it opens up the boundaries a lot, I think.
It does. I mean, in some ways it creates other boundaries. Latency, for instance. The latency that we experience over the internet, that creates problems in, conventional performance situations where the musicians are intended to be synchronous. So that means that pieces have to be composed in such a way that takes into account that latency, so that there's a kind of freedom and variability in synchronicity in the way that those events unfold in time. However, I think that if you create compositions, and there are already compositions that do this, if you look at like Lutoslawski as a model for that, who was using aleatory and using event boxes and things to create asynchronous music, you can use those same kinds of strategies where, again, the vertical alignment is unknown, but events unfold in time and they interact in different ways, creating interesting polyrhythms and events and things. And it's possible to create compelling music in this way, but we have to think about it differently than how we think about performing chamber music or orchestra music.
Very nice. So I think we kind of ran out of time. So maybe I have to move on to the last questions. So maybe for this one, I will ask Thanakarn and Thitiporn. So the last question is, how do you see the role of technology in the performative art in the future?
Actually, I have two responses for this. One is for you, and one is for you. And
Jason.
also somehow it's related to that question. The first one is, when you said like you want to get away from technology, Facebook, Instagram, any kind of media forms. The thing is that because before now, like this year, it was not completely a part of our social context, which we have choice to take it away. But since COVID happened, then, like we can't see each other in person for several months because everyone's afraid like, oh, you have a virus or not, right? So we have to use these tools more in order to communicate, to connect with one another. And now it becomes a part of our social context deeply. And also it's related to the innovation in the future because as a human being, we only develop some serious innovation in such a difficult time. And now we're moving towards the future with better technology that related to communication, space, etc. Because we can't do it in a real space anymore. And the concept of space, I think, and it would be a good thing in the future, we won't see space as 2 or 3 dimensions anymore. It will not be like a real space that we're interacting right now. It could be referred to other kind of platform, like on the media, on the internet, like Jason said. For example, like nowadays, we could see more VR installation in many places. And I believe like now, like we have VR, and in the future, it could be something that beyond VR. And that is something I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Actually, I also think about that in my research, actually, because I research about the cross-modal correspondence between senses, human senses. And I want to put that into a musical performance. And when I think of the somatosensory with the touch, right? So I start to think, how can we integrate the sense of touch into our music? So I think in that way, we cannot avoid to use like some kind of technological equipment. And I think like when we kind of combine all senses of humans, not only 5 senses, of course, we can create kind of the virtual world that we can go inside that. And for the musical performance, it kind of open up the boundaries, right? So we can go through the internet to see some concerts while we are at home, but we can sense everything, the vibrations of the hall, the smells, everything. And actually in that case, we can also design the acoustic of the hall ourselves. And I think for like the drama, opera, let's say, very old, it would change many things. Like scene change, it's going to be no gap between. It can change many things, right? Of using technology. So maybe for Thitiporn.
Well, for me, this pandemic affects a lot.
Yeah.
It could have said that relational aesthetic is over, actually, because we need a lot of people to come and make the interactive together. If not, it's not the relational aesthetic anymore. Mm-hmm. Because the social distancing, we need to keep them away.
Yeah.
So no more touching together, no more eating together, or even sitting in the hall together. In the museum and gallery, affected a lot. We need the audience to visit. And like asking me, watching the online museum is not work for me.
Okay.
We need to see the massive painting, the smell, the color, the sound. Still need them, but in a way, it's time to change. Also, change like needed to admit it about this. And I don't know. I hope that all the innovation can be help us to know ourselves more. Maybe we can live the world better.
Yeah. Nice. So I will give you, this is like the last part, I will give you kind of like 2 to 3 minutes to present your work, which will be exhibit here or premiere in the symposium. So maybe start with you.
My work is, I make the dice, I roll the dice to make the sound. I use the pattern of the dice, like we do the horoscope. We just roll them every day, one time per piece. Like it could be like when you go to check your tarot card or something. So the sound, it will be random. This, I use the 2 colors is black and the light. So it's like in the night and the daytime.
Okay. Wow.
So, yeah, like 2 times a day that I have to roll them.
Interesting. So your installation will be exhibit at that corner, right?
At the
so
corner.
If you guys interested, you can visit her installation at any time.
Yeah.
For you?
Everyone can play them and change the paper for the music box.
Nice. Okay, so maybe for you, Jason?
Sure. So, so my piece is actually kind of linked to this idea of what's now commonly referred to as Zoom fatigue.
Yeah.
Right? We spend too much time on the internet, too much time on social media, too much time in front of our computers. And, you know, during the pandemic, I was thinking about this a lot and thinking about the way in which technology, you know, my work has a lot to do with the way in which technology influences us and the way in which we influence technology in a musical and like performative context, but I think also in a social context and in a personal and emotional context. The result of spending this much time in front of a computer and on social media psychologically is really intense, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I wanted to make a piece that actually, for the first time in maybe 5 or 6 years, because I've been working with computers a lot, doesn't use computers and doesn't use digital audio at all. So what I did is I created an analog system using something similar to what's referred to as no input mixing, where you take the electrical signal that a mixer produces and feed it back into itself to amplify that signal and create modulation, the same way that synthesizers work. And what I did was I created a series of speakers and microphones, so 4 speakers, 8 microphones, and in the same way that no input mixing creates a feedback loop within the mixer, the speakers and microphones are an extension of that process, so that the proximity of the microphones to the speakers influences the quality of the sound and the way in which it's modulated. So there are 6 performers, and they each physically interact with the speakers and contact microphones through proximity and filtering and all kinds of other things, and basically create these feedback loops that then I, as the 6th performer, am changing and manipulating using equalization and attenuation of those electrical signals to create this kind of strange electrical soundscape underlying all of these physical actions and choreography of the other 5 performers.
Wow, interesting. So Jason's piece will be premiere on 20.
Yes.
Of December.
On Sunday.
Yes, on
at
Sunday.
3 p.m.
So if you're interested, so please join his concert. I heard his piece yesterday in the rehearsal. It was very cool.
Thanks. And it really, I think, more so than even any of my other music, embraces this idea of danger.
Yeah.
Because we really don't know what will happen. We really don't know.
So,
The whole idea is that as performers, we have to grapple with this thing and try and control this thing that really at any moment can do something unpredictable. And because I don't know what will happen, even though the score is quite precise, there's a lot of openness built into the piece because we have to react to how the system interprets the audio signals that we create through interaction with it.
Yeah, very great. Thanakarn.
So about my piece, it's called Cyclic Offshift. The idea of the piece is actually not quite related to the piece itself, but I will explain a bit. The piece is the title itself. The title is actually based on the circular shift, which is about the calculation on patterns, which comes in order. But my piece itself is not literally related to that. It's about this orientation. So I assign at least 3 materials to each performance. There are 5 of them in total. And then at first they started to learn these patterns by memories because they have to repeat them over time. Then it becomes a part of their system. And then afterward, the tempo changes and then the interactions between all of them sonically, it becomes different. And then it actually creates this orientation, not through the score, but through the performance. Because once the speed is keep increasing, then even the conductor herself could not control it. So in the end, it's becomes a complete, a complete new gesture, even though it's based on the same gesture, based on the same material which I give to them.
So if I'm understand correctly, so you kind of manipulate the psychologically of performers and disorientation of the minds, right?
Yeah, it's like at first grade they would think oh, this piece is simple, but the thing is once It's very basic idea. It's like once the dynamic is like increases to the top, to the point that it's so loud that they can't hear each other perfectly, then they lose the ability to listen and focus on each other parts, correct? And also like, they would think like they have authority to control themselves, but in fact they are not.
Yeah.
That kind of idea.
Yeah. Very nice. So I think we are great discussion. I think we create kind of great discussion. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Thanakarn. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Thitiporn. So Thailand Music and Art Symposium will continue until Sunday of 20th of December. And there are going to be many things, interesting things going on around this space. So please keep eyes on our Facebook page, Thailand New Music and Art Symposium. And if you couldn't attend a live sessions here at BACC, you could see us through the YouTube streaming on our YouTube channel, Thailand New Music and Art Symposium. And lastly, on behalf of Thailand Music and Art organizations, I would love to say thank you to SCG Foundation for your kind support to young artists and musicians in Thailand. So thank you very much.